Hi, this is Matt Kendall. This is the IEMT Q&A. It is the 17th of February 2026. I've got loads of questions to get through today. We didn't have a Q&A last week. We will be having one next week. It'll be Monday, not on Tuesday, just because I've got stuff to do. Right. Okay. First of all, that's for something else. Basically, it's around why was I discrediting the eye accessing cues? Somebody did a diagram. I don't know his name. I don't know where I saw it. Somebody put a diagram of eye accessing cues where they put loads of different things around the eyes, not just the audio bit. I don't know, to be honest. But and they said this is going to be helpful for EMDR and IEMT. Now, in IEMT, for those who've done IEMT training, you know that we look at the eye accessing cues that's been popularized by NLP, and we explain why we don't use them. Because for IMT, it gives us no value. We're not saying, oh, if somebody's looking here, it's an image. We don't care. Basically, when somebody's looking in some direction, we're going to use that to start the eye movements, and that is it. So actually saying that it's an image or a feeling or something is of no value to us. Now, I put that this is no value to us, and got quite a big response, which obviously, for those who recognize it, is the second stage of the three-stage overreaction process. I'd like to work with that person, that feeling you have now, how strong is it? And so a few people kind of jumped in on this. So I took this diagram and I put it into my group. And I said, this is a diagram that somebody else had done. I didn't claim responsibility, credit for it or anything like that. And the original poster, who I think came up with the diagram, said I took that image to try and make myself famous, which I don't understand. It's my group, and I'm saying this is why we don't use it. So again, second stage of the three-stage reaction process, right there. And then somebody was getting very angry at me for saying that I'm discrediting the work and now I'm trying to backpedal and stuff. Okay, so a couple of things going on here. One, I'm saying that we don't use this. Okay, so it's just an example of basically what we don't use. We reference it to say why we don't use it. What was the second thing? The second thing is, and again, nobody's actually given me a good answer to this. With the eye accessing cues, you look in a direction, and that means that the client or the person is thinking in that particular way. So they're constructing an image or they're remembering an image, or audio or kinesthetics and self-talk. Okay, but when I have a memory, it's multiple of these. So what happens then? No NLP person has given me a decent. So if I'm creating an image that has sound and feelings, what happens? What happens? I still, if somebody wants to, again, I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm just trying to explain I'm just trying to understand how we're meant to use eye accessing cues, because I think that with NLP, it slots people nicely into these little sort of categories and pigeonholes, and then you have your preferred thinking style because you're a visual person. It just doesn't make sense. Everybody has different sensory things, and I don't think that we have preferred things. We might say that we do because we've done an NLP course, but again, so that's as much as I'm going to say on that. I know this has upset some people, and if it has upset you, grow up, right? Why do you care what I'm saying? I'm saying that we don't use this. It's of no value to us in IEMT. If you want to use it for NLP, fine. I'm not saying not to. And I did say I'm not discrediting this, but I just don't have anybody who's given me a decent explanation of where you look when it's multi-sensory, and that we don't use it in IEMT. Okay, let's just all get along. Okay, let's move on to some actual more interesting things, shall we? What are the real benefits of this over other therapies? How does the client feel after one session, and how many sessions should a client have? So what are the benefits of IEMT? Well, IEMT is very fast acting, very fast working, is content free, especially in the session itself. So before the session, when you're doing, your history taking and stuff, there may be some share of content, obviously, because you want to know what you're working with. But the session itself, we're trying to train the practitioners to use as fewer words as possible when doing the actual IEMT algorithms and the work within the sessions themselves. Um, so it's very fast. It's IEMT works often where other therapeutic approaches have not worked. I found that myself with my clients, and this is what I'm consistent being reported by my practitioners and different practitioners. It's non-invasive. It's not re-traumatizing. You don't have to talk about the thing. Um, it's very long-lasting. Creates basically what I perceive to be as permanent change in people, and then you got the compound change as people go out and test that thing. When I say test that thing, if somebody has a fear of flying, are they able to actually go out and test this fear of flying, or fear of spiders or something? Okay. Um, how does somebody feel after one session? It depends. It depends on what you've been working on. So if I've been working on somebody who's got self-diagnosed PTSD with lots of trauma, they're not going to feel great at the end of a session because it's going to be quite hard going. Some people might feel really relieved, really relaxed, really rejuvenated. It really depends. I do 2 sessions with people. I book in 2 sessions. I often do a third and a fourth as well, but I generally do 2 sessions with people. Um, and I find that creates significant change. But often people are already doing different therapy as well, talk therapy, CBT, whatever it might be, as well as doing IEMT as well. That's very common. And what I have found and what people have reported back to me from both clients and different practitioners and therapists, when you do work on IEMT, it makes the talk therapy much more successful and efficient and effective because the client is now able to talk about these things without becoming emotionally involved, basically crying or overwhelmed. Uh, what I suggest to do is watch the videos of the people who I've worked with, and they will give you their personal experience of what it's been like to have IEMT for themselves. And people can put obviously comments here how you found it as well. I don't want to speak for others. How would you approach tinnitus and fear of the dentist? Have you any success with tinnitus? No, I don't. I used to have tinnitus. I don't really get it anymore, but I used to get it loads at one point, and it's very annoying. Andy Austin had a product on tinnitus. I don't know if it's still available. It might be. But fear of the dentist. Yeah, I've worked with lots of people with fears of dentists. This is a quite a common thing. Everybody's different, but basically, when you think about going to the dentist, what's it like? What's the fear of? Is it the fear of the drilling? Is it some people find it's the fear of the financial implications of it, which I fully understand more than most people. So when somebody has a fear of something, you've got to understand what the fear is. And if it's like I hate going, well, that's not a fear of the dentist. That's a thing to do with hate. So you want to work on that feeling of hate. So it could be the dentist themselves. So I'll do an identity of the dentist. So again, you're trying to break down what is this thing into kinesthetics, really. And and you can get that by the trigger, which is going to the dentist. It might be waiting in the waiting room, it might be in the dentist, it might be the pain afterwards. So you have to break down exactly what it is that's actually the cause or causing them to feel this way, and then begin to break it down from there. But yeah, well, lots of people who need dental treatment. I'm curious. Oh, right. Okay, this is quite a long one. I'm curious how others approach IMT work with clients who present with emotional numbness rather than clear negative feelings. I'm working with a client who describes herself as neutral, flat, and very used to just getting on with things. She doesn't experience strong emotional spikes and finds it hard to identify with feelings in her body. There's a sense of emotional containment that's been very normal way of coping for a long time. My current thinking is that numbness itself isn't something to process directly, and the work may sit around identity imprints and chronic patterns, such as I am someone who copes, I stay within my limits, this is just who I am. I'd like to hear from others. How do you decide whether to start with identity work versus continue to look for underlying emotions? Do you find that identity work often allows emotions to emerge later on without forcing them? Are there alternative approaches within the INT framework that you found this pattern to be particularly effective for clients like this? Any other perspectives really welcome. I don't know is sort of the short answer. If a client, first of all, what's the problem? You haven't actually identified what the problem is. Somebody not accessing emotional states and stuff like that isn't probably the problem they've come to see you with. So first of all, I want to know what the actual problem is. And that's where I'd start. If somebody has emotional numbness and stuff like that, I would personally just sort of not address it. I would address what the problem is. And so let's just say this is just who I am. Okay, what's the problem? I want to go do this. Okay, and what's that like? I just get so frustrated, this feeling of frustration. And that's how I would begin to do. I begin to tease things out of them using the patterns of chronicity, looking at where I can sort of push them and looking at what reactions I can generate. So some people don't access emotions very easily. Now, one of two things might happen here. One, they will continue that way, or two, you might unearth something and it'll bring out lots and lots of stuff, which might be quite a lot to deal with. That's something which could happen. You should prepare yourself for. They might be doing this as a trauma response. Okay, they might actually be holding, suppressing, containing feelings as a trauma response. If they are containing feelings, metaphors of movement may be a better approach than IEMT. So if somebody's been damaged by life, IEMT is great. If somebody's damaging their life, metaphors of movement tends to be a better model. So I would disregard, to a large extent, their inability to feel emotions and stuff. Great, that's the story. That's what they're sort of telling you. I would then work on what the problem is. So what's the problem? And that's when I'll sort of go from there. I'll be teasing it out of them to see what it actually is. Do I do identity stuff first? I wouldn't. No, I'd be. Again, I don't, because I don't know what the problem is, so it's hard to say. If you report back with again confidentiality taken into consideration, more specific things, I'd be able to actually look at this. Because at the moment, the stuff that you're presenting to me is not necessarily a therapeutic problem. It's just a circumstance of the person. So I can't really give advice if I don't know what the problem is or what you're actually trying to achieve. What do you do when when someone has a lot of protector parts coming in that don't let them feel most of the emotions or access their memories? I don't know what you're talking about. Protector parts. This has got nothing to do with IM protector parts. That sounds like parts therapy, and I cannot give advice on things like parts therapy because I don't know about parts therapy. So I don't know. If somebody keeps coming up, I've got these protect. So what's the problem? What's the emotion that kind of comes up? How strong is this protector part? That's the way I sort of begin to bring it down. What I think the problem is when people have done too much self-development or read too many books on their problems, they become, masters of their problems, and they come in with all these different, I have these protector parts. Jesus, do you have an emotion about this? So again, with IMT, it is a relatively quite straightforward and rudimental approach towards things. And we need to get beyond all these terms that people kind of come up with to actually work with what's there, work with what's being presented, work with the emotional stuff that's there. You could, if you want, give a, I don't know. So okay, I'm just thinking a way in. This protector part that needs to be protected, is this an identity? Where is it? How old is it? What's going on around it? That's the way that starts to look at these things. I'll just go to my. Okay, so let's look at the last ones here. So again, I always come back to what is the problem? What does the client want? And what is the problem? What do you do? Oh, so that's the same thing. Hi, Matt. When you start doing the eye movements, when you do, right, wait. Hi, Matt. What do you do when someone starts doing eye movements yet doesn't want to continue for more rounds? What do you do when an emotion you've worked on and went down to less than two, much higher on the next sessions? Okay. So what do you do when someone doing the eye movements yet they don't want to continue for more rounds? You have to have consent to work with somebody, and you've got to set the frame. If they don't want to do it, okay, bye. There's the door. Right. Hi, Matt. Where can we find the metaphors of movement you mentioned? Nuno, I'd like to introduce you to a beautiful service called Google. Metaphors of movement. Type that into Google, see what happens. Um, one second. So the two things here. When somebody wants to do the eye movement, continue for more rounds. Okay, well, there's one of two things that can happen. One, you go, okay, this isn't for you. Or two, this feeling you have now, how strong is this feeling? How familiar? And when's the first time? They're your two options, 6, 7, that I can basically see from that. And the second thing is the second part of that question. When you do an emotion, you've worked on and went down to less than 2, it is much higher on the follow-up in the next session. Okay, so this feeling now, how strong is this feeling? How familiar? And when's the first time? If someone comes to you with a limiting belief, should we work on it directly or you the I, me, self, you work? Okay, so if somebody comes to me with a limiting belief, there's lots of ways that you can sort of do this. The way that I like to do it is be quite challenging with it. So I've got this limiting belief. So, oh, well, that's rude. You know that feeling of rude. How strong is this feeling? How familiar? When's the first time? Okay, that's the first thing I'm looking for, is I'm trying to challenge their belief to see what emotion that brings up in some instances. This is more of the advanced work, to be honest. So just trying to challenge and provoke them into response sets. Also, when it's a belief, so if someone goes, I am not good enough, which is a pretty standard thing. Okay, there's different ways that we can do this. The simple way, or the very easy way, is okay, close your eyes, access this identity, and go to the first time you can remember being this way. Open your eyes, lazy ape, see what happens. The other thing you can do is you can break it down into its kinesthetics as well as the identity. So I am not good enough. Good enough, is that a kinesthetic? If so, how strong? When's the first time you can remember feeling this way? Break down the imprints. And this I that's not good enough, where is this I? How old is this I? And what's going on around this I? And then do the lazy 8 to reintegrate that. I wouldn't do an I, me, self, you on a limiting belief. And also with a limiting belief, I'm like, okay, so what's the problem? So if I have a limiting belief, I'm not good enough. Okay, so what's the problem? And get something specific and then use that to explore. So for example, I'm not good enough. Okay, so what's the problem? Well, I want to go out and meet new people. Okay, so what's the problem? Well, I just fear that they're just going to reject me. Okay. So we can even break that. They are going to reject me. So that'd be a feeling of reject, an identity of they, an identity of me. That's how I begin to break that down. Okay. Oh, there's one last question. La, 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 la. If someone has suicidal thoughts and is using alcohol as a coping strategy, is it safe to do the identity work? Only if you are trained to deal with suicide ideation and that kind of mental health work. IEMT is not a license to go work with different conditions or diagnoses. If somebody mentions suicide ideation, I'm working with straight referral to the doctor. Straight referral. I do not touch anything like that. Okay. I cannot give you advice on how to work with these clients because I am not in a position to do so. So if somebody has any sort of suicide ideation, any of this like that, refer off to people who can deal with it. If you are trained to deal with it, I can't actually give you any advice using the IMT skills. You have to use the skills at your disposal. I can't give you any advice on that. I hope you understand my reasoning for that, but I don't work with that kind of thing. That's way beyond my pay grade. Okay, guys, we are going to be back. Any questions, please put them now or forever hold your silence. We're going to be back next Monday at 11 a.m. because I'm going to the Lake District next week. Woo. It's really sunny today. It makes such a difference. So I am sorry to the people who got offended by my comments saying that we don't use the NLP eye accessing cues in IEMT. And also, when you think about how much I annoyed you, which direction do you look? Just out of interest. See you all later.